Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode of Purpose Through Fitness. I'm your host, Kevin Fetish. I'm really excited to be bringing Purpose Through Fitness to you. This started as an idea of mine to build a community of people looking to make a positive change. A place where someone struggling in life can speak to others going through similar circumstances, or speak to someone that may have gone through similar circumstances and can attest to what it's like on the other side. I believe that through health and fitness, we all begin to think clear. When we begin to think clear, we start to uncover things that we're passionate about. Once we uncover the things we're passionate about, we need to pursue those things. When we pursue them with 100% effort, then you start to unlock your purpose. You start to find what you were meant to do on this planet. Now, they say that the odds of being a human are 400 trillion to 1. I want you to think about that for a moment. 400 trillion to 1. That is far greater than winning the Mega Lotto. So what we need to do is learn to be happy with ourselves and just be alive in an existence. When we can do that, it makes the other issues we have to deal with much easier to address. We're going to get right into this. This first episode is going to be a backstory on myself, where I came from, some of the struggles that I faced, as well as where I plan on going myself. I want to share my own personal journey with you so you can see someone going from the beginning of their journey to wherever this journey may lead. I expect there to be a lot of ups and downs. I expect there to be good things and bad things that happen. But I believe in this community, and I believe in building an environment where we all can boost each other and we all can share our own journeys to becoming our best self. So without any further ado, I'm going to jump right into this. I'm 31 years old. I was born in upstate New York in a small town called Binghamton, New York. It was a very small kind of farm town feel. Although there was a city close by, it wasn't a very big city, and there wasn't a lot of big city amenities around. So it was very much at least where I lived, your stereotypical farm town. Which, of course, anybody you talk to that's not from New York doesn't even know that majority of the state is like that. They just think everybody from New York is from New York City. But anyways, I grew up in a beautiful household with two loving parents. They met in high school sweethearts, got together, had 4 beautiful children. Grew up in a great school system. A lot of the teachers I had, my brothers had. And it was all things considered, it was a very good environment for someone to grow up in. Unfortunately, I never viewed it that way. When I was younger in elementary and middle school, I was part of the popular group, if you would put it that way. And when I moved into high school, it seemed like that summer transition from middle school to high school, a lot of things switched. My parents did run a relatively tight ship, so I wasn't able to hang out with some people on weekdays. So I don't know if that led into people just not wanting to hang out with me or not being able to hang out. And come high school, it went from all these friends that I had in the popular group down to me basically seeking new friendships. The unfortunate thing for me is some of the popular kids who I used to be friends with had also said some pretty nasty things to me. My way of deflecting that was saying some of those similar things and teasing other kids who I viewed less than me. This led to an ongoing cycle of depression. I was turned down by certain girls. I A lot of kids, again, who were popular just wouldn't hang out with me or talk with me. And I started to get that feeling that I wasn't good enough. So this went on for a few years, really came to a head in high school in my junior year. There was a moment where I was sitting on my window ledge. Now, to give you the full context of this, my window in my bedroom back in my hometown, the house I grew up in, was on the third floor. One of the windows overlooked my side yard and the driveway was below. So I thought, you know what? It's over. I'm going to jump. This is going to be the end of it. So I wrote out a note to my family, took the screen out of my window, and I sat on the ledge. Sat there for a good 3-4 minutes, and I just started crying. Crying. And something pulled me back in. How I should have viewed it then was a divine intervention of God saving me, telling me, I'm here for you. I'm watching you, I see you, and I love you. But I interpret it as, great, I can't even commit suicide. I can't even do that good. I'm just a failure. And this began my thought process of just self-hating. I had thought I was a failure for a long time. I always did decent in school. School came relatively simple to me. I was able to coast by without trying very hard and still getting relatively good grades. But my image of myself was not a good one. There were many times behind closed doors where all I could think about is, why am I even here? Heading into the latter stages of high school, because of this depression I had, I started to feel like I didn't care. Things that I used to care about, turning homework in on time, trying on tests, making sure I always told my parents where I was really going, coming home on time, on curfews, things like that I always did consistently. I just started not caring. Started lying to my parents on where I was going and what I was doing. And during this time period, which I think is very common amongst a lot of high school kids, I began to cave into the peer pressure and try new things. For me, the first thing, it was cigarettes. It was probably about a 6 to 7 month time frame from the first time I started trying cigarettes to being a full-blown, close to pack-a-day smoker. After a while of smoking cigarettes, then I tried smoking marijuana for the first time. I really enjoyed that. So I'm getting ready to graduate high school, starting to really be in my rebellious phase, smoking a lot, drinking a fair amount, smoking a lot of pot. Now, mind you, my parents didn't know any of this, or if they did, they just kept it quiet, which doesn't seem like something they would do, so I'm pretty sure they didn't know. But I graduate high school, and the game plan is going to college at Ferris State University in Michigan. I'm going to major in professional golf management, and that's going to be my career. Summer before, I started partying a lot more, drinking a lot more, smoking a lot more, and just not caring even more. I finally get to college. Now, the dorm room I was in was considered the quote-unquote honors dorm, and we were allowed to move into our dorm and on campus about a week and a half or 2 weeks before the other students were allowed. So we had a few weeks before students would move in, before classes would start, where it was just a bunch of kids getting to know each other, again, partying, drinking, smoking, having fun. It was during this time period between when the honors dorm students were in and when the regular students came in that I met another kid. He was part of the honors dorm as well. Seemed to get along very well. He seemed to be very similar to a lot of the kids I went to high school with that I was friends with. So I just seemed to connect with him from the very beginning. One night, probably about 2 a.m, I hear a knock on my door. It's this kid. He comes in and says, "Man, I think the cops are after me. Can I just chill in here for a second?" Now, I'm in my half asleep, half awake state, so I say, "Sure, why not? Come on in. Just, if you want to toss on the TV, go ahead. I'm going to try and pass back out." So I'm sitting there. Within seconds, all of a sudden, I hear this tapping and this scraping sound. What the hell is that? So I turn around and I see this kid has a bag on my desk with this white chunk in it. This white substance. Sure as you can guess right now, cocaine. So he turns to me and says, "Hey man, you want a bump?" I was very weak into peer pressure at this point and could never say no to anyone, even if I didn't want to do something. That's how I started smoking cigarettes, started smoking pot, started drinking. So I said, "Sure, yeah, man, I've done it before. Let me go ahead and do that." And I took a line of cocaine, and this rush of energy came over me. An energy I've never felt before, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could do anything. I was stuck in such a rut of depression that I never had any confidence in myself. I never thought I could do anything. This gave me that. Boy, did I get hooked instantly. Tried it a few more times with him out at parties, having fun. And that led into, over the next about 3 to 4 months, I spent almost $1,200 and was doing this stuff on a daily basis. I skipped all my classes, was playing ping pong and pool all the time, snorting cocaine, smoking pot, drinking alcohol, basically anything I could to avoid responsibility. Now, in the golf program I was in, one of the classes that was mandatory for us, the rules for it were simple. If you miss 2 classes, you're kicked out of the program. I think within the first month of classes, I had missed 2. And I started freaking out. So I kept going to the doctors, the campus doctor. I'm sick, I'm nauseous, blah, blah, blah. He'd write me a prescription for some stuff. I'd go back, give the note to my teachers, and lather, rinse, repeat. And I did this over and over and over. Finally, it got to a point where I asked the doctor, is there something that can be done? I keep missing all these classes. And he had mentioned to me, I don't remember the specific term, but something about like a medical leave or something like that, where they do some kind of full medical evaluation, review all the times I'd been at the doctor before, and see if there's something that can be done, whether that was a reimbursement of the tuition I paid, or being able to start from scratch next semester, or whatever it was. Well, I kind of freaked out. I had thought that if they did a full medical evaluation on me, they were going to see exactly what was in my system, and I would be completely out of luck. So I figured to avoid that, I needed to make a change, and I needed to move home. This was very depressing to me because the golf management was originally my passion and where I wanted to be, and I did not take advantage of that. I abused that. My grandmother had given me and my 3 brothers a bit of money after she had passed. It was the last thing left to us. And we were to use that as we see fit. I coerced my parents into sending me $1,500 of that money to join a club. That club was traveling all throughout the state of Michigan. We were going to go to different country clubs, do wine tastings, kind of see how the country clubs operate, which fell in great with golf management. You can get to see how a whole country club and resort goes. Or at least that was my spiel to my parents. Mind you, this was an actual club on campus, something that I went and met the people for, but I fully knew that I wasn't going to use the money for that. So they sent me the money. I took about $300 of that, bought myself a used guitar, and then spent the other $1,200 over the next couple months on cocaine and pot, and that's what I proceeded to waste away my life with. So after I made that conscious decision that I was going to move back home, or I needed to change environment, I packed everything up, drove home, and the unfortunate thing is I did not actually address the problem. I only addressed the location the problem was in. I didn't know anybody back home who was doing cocaine, so I thought if I went back home, I'd be less apt to try and find it or reach out to people and ask them if they know where I can get some. So after I moved home, I began to get really close with a kid I went to high school with. We were always casual friends in high school, but never really close. We developed a bond during this time. He was into a lot of prescription pills at the time, which is, again, the peer pressure for me. I didn't have any way of saying no, because my thought process was, if I say no to that person, they're not going to like me or they're going to think less of me. So he got me into a lot of the prescriptions. There was uppers and downers. We were doing Adderall on almost a daily basis to give us that energy and flow throughout the day. And then the evenings was typically your Vicodin, Oxycontin, smoking pot to relax and be able to sleep. This was a daily habit for us. We were hanging out probably 5-6 days a week, had some friends, some mutual friends that we hung out with, and we did this a lot, completely wasting away our lives just doing this on a daily basis. After I graduated from community college, shortly after this, him and I started to part ways a little bit. It was at this time I actually friended another kid who I went to high school with. Same scenario, we were casual friends but never really hung out that much, and him and I just seemed to click instantly. We found out we had a lot more in common than we ever thought we did, from music to movies to passions and everything like that, and we started hanging out. Again, him and I were hanging out 4, 5, 6 days a week. Him and the group of friends he had at the time is where I started to begin experimenting with the party drugs. Ecstasy, acid, Molly, mushrooms, anything that you would find revolved around that scene. So at this point, I'm in such a mixed bag that I'll pretty much do anything you put in front of me. Give me ecstasy, I'll take it. Give me Adderall, I'll take it. Give me Vicodin, I'll take it. Give me acid, I'll take it. Give me whatever it was. I didn't really care. I was experimenting with so many different things, and truthfully at the time was having so much fun with what I tried that I said, screw it. I want to keep trying and see what's out there. First time that really got me into a big problem was I was at a party with another one of my friends, and kid laid out this white powder on the kitchen counter. It was like, hey, you want a bump? So I thought, sure, it's cocaine. Let me go ahead and do that. So I bumped the line, and instantly I just did not feel right. It was not that rush that I normally got with cocaine. It wasn't like any ecstasy I'd ever tried. This was something brand new to me. As soon as I snorted it, I turned around and my buddy was walking back in the kitchen with just these wide eyes. He pulls me aside. He goes, did you snort that? I was like, yeah, why? He goes, dude, that's meth. I start freaking out. This was the first point, I knew I had done all these prescription pills, cocaine, pot, ecstasy, acid, but those were all things that a lot of people do on a social level, which is still wrong, but it wasn't something like this where you hear meth and you know a lot of the images and thoughts that go through your head. So it led for a very interesting night. The next day, I was a little bit upset with myself, but being in that lackluster stage, I still didn't really care. So I continued on this path. started getting into DJing and producing. My best friend and I, we were wanting to try and do something as music producers. Our thoughts were farm town in upstate New York is not the place to do this. So we wanted to try and move somewhere, and we thought South Florida would be great. It's close to Ultra Music Festival, the Winter Music Conference. This is where we're going to make our living. Now, it was shortly before this time, my grandmother had passed away. My grandmother, I was always very close with on my mother's side. She was the only one in the family I talked to that listened to some of the music I listened to, your Frank Sinatra, Andre Bocelli type music. So her and I had a very unique relationship. She is and forever will be the single greatest person I've ever met in my life. Anybody who's ever met with her and spoke with her would say the same thing. It doesn't matter what you think or believe, she'll sit down and have a conversation with you. She'll tell you she loves you, and she'll have a smile on her face, and she'll be very open to listening to you. Very admirable traits to have. Well, after she passed, any belief in God was gone. It already had started drifting. Now, just to backtrack a little bit, when I grew up, we went to church for a fair amount of time, but eventually, once all of my brothers and I became old enough, our love for football Sundays decided to trump going to church services. So we stopped going, and I was always, I guess you could say, if we're going to put a label on it, I guess you could say I was an agnostic at this time. Belief that something's out there, but not really saying it was the God or the biblical God or the Christian God or whatever it be. But I didn't live in any way based on what God could be out there. After, as I said, my grandmother passed away, she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and she wilted away relatively quickly. They give you this book that details, this is what's going to happen next, this is what's going to happen next, and she followed that to a T. And to see this woman who was a very religious woman, very nice woman, great person to talk to, having her suffer that way, I became very bitter towards God. From that point on, I basically denounced God's existence and didn't really care about anything along those lines. The reason I bring that up is God brought me back, which we'll find out a little bit later. But I wanted you to know that throughout this journey, I distanced myself from God and religion. I distanced myself from any belief of what was out there. So, a couple months before my friend and I decide that we're going to move to South Florida, we're attending this party. The party, again, there was a few of us that were taking your party drugs. We had some ecstasy and acid that night and smoking a lot of pot. We go to this party, and it's just a party full of kids drinking alcohol, your typical party. So I already felt very awkward. I didn't know anyone at this party. I'm still relatively new getting used to these party drugs, so I'm moving around, but I can't really speak. I'm not able to form full words because I just don't have full control over myself. So we're sitting in this kid's room, and I start to hear these voices. Now, these voices sound like the people that are in the room with me, and it was these negative, judgmental things. Who is this kid? What the hell is he doing here? Why is he acting so weird? Is he okay? And these things were very, very loud. I swear to this day I was looking around the room and I didn't see anybody's lips moving, but I heard these voices. So I truthfully thought I was hearing these people's thoughts. It got to a point after a few hours, or what at least seemed like a few hours of this happening, where I pulled my friend aside and I was like, we need to go. Plain and simple, I'm freaking out right now. I can't control myself. We need to go. If you want to stay, that's fine, but I'm just letting you know, I got to get out of here. We both decide to leave. We go back to his place, sleep, wake up the next day. I truly feel like a different person. These voices are louder than ever. I thought I would just sleep it off and be fine. I start to notice my glare. I'm just glaring off into the abyss, not paying attention to my surroundings. I go home. I try resting and sleeping. Nothing works. I start to notice when I'm at work or even in social situations, I can't look somebody in the eye. If I look that person in the eye, I started hearing all these voices again, and they would get louder and louder and louder and louder. I was afraid to admit any of this because we were getting ready to leave and move to South Florida. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to get to South Florida, new environment. I'll be warm weather, close to a beach. This is what I want, and we'll be fine. Unfortunately, that did not happen. Moved to Florida, continued to do a lot of the same bad habits. The kid whose party we went to actually ended up moving in with us at one point, which was bad for me because him and I didn't seem to get along from the get-go. But anytime I saw him, I would replay that moment in my head, that party in my head, and the voices would just get louder and louder and louder and louder. It got to a point where instead of wanting to go out and get out of the house and just enjoy my environment, I wanted to be at home, and not just at home. I wanted to be in my room, tucked away in the corner as far as I could, as frequently as I could. I wanted to separate myself from reality. I didn't want to see people because I saw people and these voices got louder. I make eye contact with somebody, even just walking down the street. These voices got louder and louder. In fact, I developed this habit. The only way I could sleep at night for the better part of 2 years was my bed, how I had it set up was side of the bed touching one wall, head of the bed touching the other wall. So I always had the bed touching two walls. And I would take all my blankets and pillows. I would curl up as far as I could in that corner, cover myself with the blankets and pillows. That was the only way I could find comfort at night. I wanted to almost feel like I was the only person in existence in my own reality. And for that brief period of when I would sleep at night, it felt that way, and I found a little bit of comfort. I still heard these voices, but I thought, I can't see anything right now. I can't hear anything right now. There's nothing around me. It's just me in this existence. So I was at least able to get myself to sleep. This goes on for a few years. A few events led to my best friend and I's falling out. So we started to drift apart. There was issues with his girlfriend, issues with that kid who moved in with us, issues with both of us paying our rent, and it just led to a slow, long falling out between him and I. So we decided we're going to part ways. He leaves, moves back up north. To this day, which we're going on, almost 5-6 years now, we haven't spoken to each other. I don't know what he's doing. I wish him all the best. I hold no ill will. And I really hope he has found some peace and happiness, as I wish everyone finds that peace and happiness. I hope someday him and I are able to at least see each other face to face and just wish each other all the best. There's a lot of blame to go around for the both of us. But truthfully, a lot of my negativity and a lot of my bad reactions to things was the primary reason why I was so miserable. And I think a lot of my being miserable dragged him down. After we parted ways, I moved in with my brother who was living in Florida at the time. And I knew moving in with family, I wasn't going to be able to get away with the partying as much as I was doing at least the party drugs. So I said, whatever. I need to stop. I need to clear my head of all of this and try and figure something out. At this time, I was so resentful towards my friend that I stopped liking dance music. I stopped wanting to produce and DJ because I associated that with him, and I started to grow a hatred for it. Much like I did with my old group of friends in high school, I started to resent and hate other people based off of how they treated me. When again, I know this was all just my own personal fault and my own interpretations and reactions to this that created that. Shortly after moving in with my brother, I am struggling. I didn't want to say anything to my family because I still didn't want them to know I was taking drugs or what the full extent I was doing. So I tried to fill that void. Filling that void meant smoking a lot more pot, smoking closer to 1.5 packs, 2 packs a day, and drinking whenever I could. This also was heavy time for prescription pills for me. The pot dealer I had at the time, that was his other thing he was into. So constantly I would go get my bag from him. Hey, what do you got today? Got some Xanax, got some Vicodin, some Oxycontin, whatever it was. Sure, let's toss some of those in. It was enough to help me sleep at night. Unfortunately, anytime I started to come off of being high or started to feel the effects of these pain pills or muscle relaxers wearing off, I was flooded with these conscious thoughts. What you're doing is wrong. What you're doing is wrong. What you're doing is wrong. And I would hear all these voices again, over and over and over. 3 years, 4 years, hearing these voices every single day. Truth be told, and I'm pretty sure my brother knew, either never said anything or it kind of led to what the next step is after this, but my brother, who was medically discharged from the military, got prescription pills for pain pills and muscle relaxers, and I always did my best to take one here and there. I would try and sneak in his room and take 1 or 2, hope he'd never notice. I truly think he did notice at one point, or was pretty sure, and just never said anything, but I thought I was being clever. I continued to do this for a couple years. Was stuck in that rut, eating like crap, smoking, drinking, pain pills, and I began to drift even further from people. Even when I was living with my best friend, even up to living with my brother, I was distant from my family, would never call and talk to them, ignored all their phone calls. Oftentimes they had to ask my brother how I was doing, and I lived with him. And I knew I didn't want to speak with them because I would have to lie about things. I would have to make things sound better so they didn't worry, when I knew I felt like crap and I didn't want to be around. One night I come home and my parents are here sitting with my brother in the family room. They decide they're going to conference in my other brothers, and they're going to do a little mini intervention. Again, at this point, I believe a couple of my brothers knew the cocaine issue I had when I was at Ferris State, but I don't believe they knew the full extent of everything else I was doing. So this intervention was from a, we're concerned, we never hear from you, we hear you're always in your room, not acting like yourself, that kind of intervention. So we all go through our spiel, say what we need to say. Part that breaks my heart more than anything is at one point during this intervention, I looked both my mother and father in the face and said, I have no zest for life and don't see any reason in wanting to live anymore. For all you parents out there, I want you to imagine if your youngest child comes up to you and says this. The look on my mother's face is ingrained in my head to this day. And I'm sorry that I ever had to put them in a position to even hear that. But knowing where I'm at right now, I wouldn't change it for the world. So, intervention goes on, we're all talking. And truthfully speaking, a lot of the stuff they're saying, I'm hearing, but I'm not listening. So it's in one ear, out the other. In my head, all I'm hearing is, yeah, whatever. All I can hear are these voices. Again, telling me I'm not good enough. Who am I? I'm weird. All these negative, judgmental things. It wasn't until my oldest brother said the simple line, I don't know who the beep you are anymore. Now, my oldest brother growing up was my idol. My dad was my hero, but my oldest brother was my idol. I mimicked him in a lot of ways, tried to wear similar style of clothing, listened to a lot of similar music, always looked up to him, wanted to be like him. So to hear him say this was that first point where I basically said to myself, what the hell am I doing? So I told them I'm going to make an effort. I'm going to try and make a change. And I actually felt I meant it for the first time. It was a long uphill battle after that. First thing I needed to do was clear something out. I started with the prescription pills. Was able to, after slowly weaning myself off, was able to get rid of those. That did lead to an uptick of drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, and eating really crappy foods. Very common when you're trying to quit something, you feel you need to replace it with something else, and we tend to replace it with things we shouldn't. After several months of being clean of all drugs, I started to feel a little bit better, but I was still lacking a lot of energy, and these voices were still extremely loud in my head. So, again, I tried a few more things. I wasn't giving my best effort, but I was at least giving some effort. I would try to read a little bit more. I was trying to find healthier habits to embark on, even if it was just going outside walking. I started watching some church services that my brother would send me, just small things here and here. Nothing that I was consistent with, just small things. I'm not seeing much progress, and I'm feeling a little bit discouraged, but I keep trying. Now, after about a year of me trying some of these things, I had come to a conclusion. That conclusion was, where I'm at right now is my peak. I'm destined to be average. I'm not destined to have anything great happen to me because of all the past sins I committed, because of all the past drug use, the teasing and bullying of kids, all of this stuff that I did. I now have to spend the rest of my life just being average and mediocre to make up for that. I didn't think that anything good was ever going to happen to me. I worked with several people who were 50, 60, 65 years old that seemed to be in that position that I thought I was going to be in when I got to that age, which was just working a full-time job, hoping that you would retire, but chances are reality hits and you're not going to retire. So you're just working a full-time job from the moment you could as a kid until the moment they bury you in the ground. I thought that's what I was destined for. Shortly after this, I started researching a little bit more other people's journeys. I started finding some motivational speakers, people that were preaching a lot of these things, helping you figure out how to get out of these dark times. And I always listened to it with a grain of salt. I'd listen to these people and say, yeah, that's easy for you. You're a multimillionaire. You own all these businesses. Of course you can say that. And I was very resentful towards them. It wasn't until I was listening to Gary Vee that he preached. There was a video he did. I'm trying to remember specifically what it said, but it was basically along the lines of all the negative crap happening in your life is your fault. And of course, anybody in my position looks at that and says, my fault? What do you mean it's my fault? It's my fault all this bad stuff's happening, and it took me a while, but I started to believe that. I started to say, you know what? It wasn't my parents' strict curfew that caused my friends to leave me. It wasn't the guy who let me try cocaine who was responsible for me getting addicted. It wasn't my friends who got me into other things. It wasn't their fault why I was where I was. This was all me. So once I started to actually believe this, I started being a little more consistent with things. Around this time, my brother moved away from Florida to Delaware, and I started living with a few people that he worked with at the golf course down here in Florida. I was trying to make some kind of change, but still pretty miserable. I didn't like the people I was living with. Had an issue with one of the kids who was supposed to live with me for months and months. After the first month and a half, decided he was going to move out. And I just kept getting more resentful. I'm still trying to make these changes, but I was very resentful. I got to a point where after these two kids moved out, another girl who had worked with my brother at the golf course is going to move in with me. We have a great relationship to begin with everything. Some mutual friends, so we all got along, hung out, had a good time. Now, I'm very emotional at this point. One day I'm very angry, I hate the world. The next day I'm happy-go-lucky. And it was an emotional roller coaster on a daily basis. I think it was a combination of cravings for things that I wanted to do, a mixture of just being at odds and at war with myself in my own head, and I just wasn't very pleasant to be around. After living together for about a year and a half, we had a small falling out between us, which, looking back on it, 100% my fault. My interpretation of the situation and how I vented my frustration should have never been done the way I did. But it led to her and I arguing and eventually deciding we were going to part ways. The original goal was after our lease, her and I were going to go find a place and live together ourselves. But we decided it might be best for both of us if we just go our separate ways. Truthfully, I hope she listens to this podcast at one point and knows that I do love her and I wish her all the best. I think she's an amazing person, and I do think she's got the world in her hands, and she can climb as far as she wants to climb. But after this argument, there was several months before our lease was up, and this was where everything came to a head. I was so angry with a lot of different things. I needed something to vent that frustration. So I started biking to the gym in the morning before work. It went from 1 or 2 days a week, skip a week, 1 or 2 days a week, skip a week, to 2-3 days a week. 2-3 days a week pretty consistently. Started doing it more and more and more. And I was finding that When I went to the gym earlier and worked out hard, a lot of the stress throughout the day wasn't there as much as it used to be. So I was like, whew, I'm onto something. Got into it a little bit more. Started making conscious, healthier decisions with my eating habits. Kicked the smoking habit completely. Started drinking a little bit less. And I noticed the more I was making these drastic changes, the quieter those voices got. That was all I wanted. Regardless of anything that happened, if I could get rid of those voices, I would be happy. How many sleepless nights I've had, how many conversations and things in my life I've missed just because these voices overtook my reality. So I kept doing this. I got myself into a routine. Became a habit. Once this became a habit, I started finding myself on a daily basis. I was researching anything related to fitness. Muscle types, body movement, exercises, nutrition, things that are good for you, things that are bad for you. And I thoroughly enjoyed what I was doing. I didn't consciously think about it at the time, but I found everything I was doing was revolving around health and fitness. Around this time, my cousin, who also went through some very difficult times herself, she became a personal trainer with the National Academy of Sports Medicine. I was so friggin' proud of her that she did that, and she's now kicking butt as a personal trainer out in California. And that kind of sparked something with me. I was like, maybe I could look into personal training. So I started studying more, signed up, and officially received my certification as a personal trainer, again with NASM, the National Academy of Sports Medicine. Well, all of this became consistent. I got to a point where I started scheduling out each of my days, scheduling when I'm taking my vitamins, when I'm eating my meals, started prepping my meals, consistently scheduling my workouts, making sure I have at least 4 weeks of workouts planned. So all that time I can just execute. I don't need to worry about what happens next. And I started to notice that the voices went from a dull whisper at this time to basically vanished. And I became much more frequent with church services, reading the Bible, reading books in general. And one day it hit me that this is it. Everything I've done in life, all the decisions I've made, good and bad, have led me to this. It led me to finding something that I'm passionate about. Once I found something I was passionate about, I was able to fill the void of empty time and space with these healthy habits. And in doing so, started to see a drastic shift on all levels. I could start speaking with people easier. Social situations didn't bother me as much anymore. And I was just generally starting to feel happier. So I decided I'm going to go ahead and give this 100%. Move out, end up living in a single bedroom apartment by myself, and decide I'm going to dedicate everything I can to this. Continue listening to positive messages, working out 5-6 days a week, stretching, yoga, reading the Bible, church services, all of this stuff I kept doing consistently, and I just noticed myself getting better and better and better. And it wasn't until one church service that I received almost a sign that here is the path I've been wanting you to be on. And I felt this weight lift off of my shoulders. So I continue on doing what I'm doing, and I decide why not do a podcast? Why not share some of this with people and just see what happens? So I created this basic podcast, was struggling with a name, trying to figure out what I wanted it to revolve around, wanted it to be fitness related, faith-based related, motivational. A lot of these things I wasn't sure of, but I knew I needed to do it. I started realizing by following my own passions, by uncovering those passions and following them, I found my purpose. I believe my purpose is to help better the lives of those around me, to share my struggles and journey, to allow others to make that change in their life and uncover their purpose as well. This is what led me to creating Purpose Through Fitness. Through fitness, I found my purpose. And I truly believe whether my purpose was related to fitness or not, had I never started eating healthy or working out, I would have never uncovered any of this. So I want to create a community and environment of people looking to make that change in their life. We're going to share stories of our ups and downs. We're going to share health and nutrition tips. We're going to share exercise ideas. And we're going to create a community of people that preaches positive change. I want us all to help one another become our best self. If we can become our best self, the amount we can do, the amount of good we can do in this world is unlimited. Next week's episode, we're going to primarily focus on accountability. A lot of people struggling in this world, whether it be with relationships, with drug addiction, with depression, whatever it may be that you're struggling with, the last thing we blame is ourselves. We always point to external people, events and situations that led us to where we are and don't realize that it's our own interpretations of those events that has led to this negative energy. That negative energy has led to a lot of negative events happening in your life. We're going to focus on how you can become more accountable for these actions that you take, how you can be more accountable for the decisions you make in life on a day-to-day basis. I'm really happy and blessed that you all joined me today. I love each and every one of you and want you to know that you have greatness inside. I want you to know that nobody is better than you and you are better than nobody. We all have that unique gift inside of us given to us by God to be great, given to us to pursue our purpose. We're going to find that purpose together. And I'm truly excited to share this journey with you. If you enjoyed this podcast today, I'd love to hear from you. Please like and comment below. You can also follow us on Instagram at Purpose_through-fitness and at Twitter and Facebook at Purpose Through Fitness. You can find us on purposethroughfitness.com. And stay tuned, we got some really exciting things come up, including membership details for how you can turn your life around and start living that happy, healthy lifestyle. God bless each and every one of you. I love you. Stay safe this week, and we'll see you next week.